Good morning and welcome to the European House in Berlin. My name is Nikolaus von Peter and I welcome you on behalf of Jörg Wojan, the representative of the European Commission in Germany, who sends you his best regards. The European Commission is very happy to host this third day of this fabulous event, as we did in previous years. And there is a simple reason for this. It is called Pencho Kutsev. Pencho, year after year, you deliver what you promise, a European Data Summit. You bring together the foremost experts in the field of data. You stay true to the European perspective, and you explore the issue of data from all possible angles, and all of this with a rather small team, yourself. It is really impressive, and I believe it is high time to thank you for your tireless effort in facilitating debates about European data issues. And I'm sure that people behind their screens are now clapping their hands. We as the European Commission very much depend on people like you, Pencho, in particular in an area that is as complex and rapidly evolving as data. Because we want to get it right, and we cannot do it with a top-down approach. For good reason, our approach to data relies on cooperation, on sharing, on trust. So we need fora like the one you have created with the European Data Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the European Commission is in the midst of a reflection process on how to increase access to and further use of data, so that more public and private actors can benefit from techniques such as big data and machine learning. In the essence, it's about ensuring fairness in the allocation of economic value among actors of the data economy. We have consulted widely on a near initiative that the Commission Work Programme for 2021 refers to as the Data Act. We have outlined the issues we may want to tackle with the initiative in a document that you can find online if you search for Have Your Say and Data Act. These issues include clearer rules on business-to-business access to and sharing of data, both non-personal and personal, a greater use of privately held data by the public sector, fairer and more competitive markets for data processing services such as cloud computing, a greater adoption of smart contracts, and safeguards for non-personal data in international contexts. These horizontal rules the initiative will propose are supposed to complement the Data Governance Act and may be seconded by initiatives for sectoral data spaces or for data access and use in specific sectors or markets such as vehicle data. The initiative was announced for the third quarter of 2021, but you should not expect it before the end of this year, but rather next year. So discussions today may well have an impact on shaping the proposal. Many thanks to all of you for tuning in, to you, Pencho, again, and to our speakers. I'm now wishing all of us a very fruitful debate this morning, and I'm handing back to you, Pencho. Many thanks.
Thanks for the pleasant words. Dear Nikolaus, this event is basically only possible thanks to your great collaboration. This summit couldn't be European without the support from the representation of the European Commission in Berlin. Many thanks. So, also from me, welcome to the third day of the European Data Summit. Without further ado, I would like to invite Axel Voss, the member of the European Parliament representing the European People's Party, for his keynote. Axel is a prominent voice when it comes to digital policy in Europe. He has recently published a prominent paper advocating for a new approach in the field of general data protection regulation, as well as papers regarding and addressing the European data and digital sovereignty. I hope that Mr. Voss is with us. Are you listening to us? Live from Bonn, I guess, or from Brussels.
Yes, still in Brussels.
Still in Brussels. Dear Axel, I've already mentioned that in the beginning of the year you have published your manifesto addressing some crucial issues when it comes to the European data and digital sovereignty. It would be greatest pleasure if you could describe a bit what was your motivation to write the paper and what was the feedback that you received in the meantime.
Yeah, very good. Thanks a lot. And once again, good morning to everyone. So the digital age is changing a lot in our day-by-day lives. And the digital transformation, of course, continues to have a strong impact and has led to radical changes in almost every part of Europe's economy and society. And despite of our ambition to remain competitive at the global level, so we are failing more and more behind the digital world. And so if you're looking to the ranking of companies so far, we have 8 European companies under 200 companies, and the most is taking place outside Europe, and we do not have these operating systems, the browser, social media networking, messaging services, and search engine, and so on. And that's why I was asking myself a bit what we have to do to survive in a digital age as Europe in a whole. And this scenario, so from my point of view, calls for urgently comprehensive, consistent and horizontal digital policy agenda. And and this concept also should, or this idea should also start with the idea of digital sovereignty. So a European way of digitization which contrasts with the US, American or Chinese approach. And that this is human-centered, this is value-orientated and based on the concept of the social market economy. So from my point of view, it would create a digital environment for individual determination on legally guaranteed personal freedom, while at the same time reducing our dependency on foreign hardware, software, and services. And then if you're asking yourself what we have to do to survive in the digital age and also to become a leader in some digital aspects, then you have to acknowledge somehow that we have to be more ambitious. Ambitious also in, at first, political will. And probably there's a kind of changing of mindset necessary because our national politicians are thinking probably not how I'm seeing this in this European-wide dimension, not in this dimension of being a good competitor to the other regions in the world. And this is already a kind of a failure that we do not have this strong will to survive in a digital world. Everybody is saying this, but we need a kind of a execution strategy. And this is totally lacking. And from my point of view, unfortunately, I have to say this, we do not have European leadership at all in this question. We are regulating some aspects to have a kind of a better start, but we are not having a kind of a concept for this execution of these ideas, and we do not have then setting or have set already priorities. So what we would like to have to be leading on in, and this is a kind of a failure, I would say, not to prioritize, not to be more strict in executing these things. If we are looking, for instance, to the semiconductor situation right now, we have to admit, so we are totally dependent so far, and the idea is correct, and this has done the European Commission already, I think in January this year, or last year, I can't remember, I think this year, this digital compass or digital decade But the idea of being more independent, for instance, of semiconductors, has not led to a situation where we are saying, oh yes, we are taking also 50 billion euros in our hands and building a kind of a manufacturing plan so far. So this is something I'm missing. We won't succeed in just regulating the Digital Services Act or the Digital Market Act. Yes, this is important to do, but it's not leading to a leading position. And then we are coming to the situation of artificial intelligence. This artificial intelligence is a kind of a strategic, relevant new technology, of not that new technology, but it's a technology where we have to succeed. Otherwise, we won't compete, or we get more and more dependent. And that's why I would say, and here we have this, if you're leading in AI, then you can lead the world. But if you're not doing this, you totally won't succeed. And this is probably what we haven't understood also on the highest level of politicians. And this is why I'm desperately asking for more action all the time. But coming back to this digital manifesto, so the key components of this new digital agenda, from my point of view, is that Europe has to be united in a way. So we have to join forces if we would like to scale up also to other regions. We need this change of mindsetting. We need European projects. And here you can think about of AI, and this is a must from my point of view, but also coming forward in prioritizing if this is the self-driving car or 3D printing, blockchain, if this is smart tech, smart farming or green tech, and so on. This is what we should choose at the end. And here we could also achieve a kind of a digital sovereignty by this introducing a European way towards increasingly digitalized world, in particular by developing a strategic digital agenda that includes large investments as well as close cooperation with the private sector in a range of digital flagship areas. And our objective here should be to become less dependent on these non-European technologies and services, while also establishing sound ethical, technological, and security standards for those issues, for those parts we cannot produce ourselves. And a second step then would be we need to advance to a digital single market. And I mean a kind of a real digital single market. And if this would include also civil rights aspects or aspects of civil law, then also member states should give up towards a kind of a European approach on all of these. Then we have a good starting point in saying we are coming with one digital single market and not a fragmented one. And so this would be a kind of a second point of these. And therefore, also, we need to change the way of our political processes and governmental systems. So making legislative procedures more effective by introducing, let's say, a kind of an e-governance service on a large scale and better safeguarding also our citizens and democratic systems. Therefore, we need more flexibility. As far as I'm seeing the situation right now, because we have now AI in place, all central orientated states or systems, and also especially the authoritarian regimes, they have now a kind of an advantage. Last century, this hasn't been the case. There has been democratic states in a kind of a better position because they could analyze data better in different areas. But now we have the totally reverse situation, that centralized data, all this information might now be analyzed. And here we have to do something. If we do not want to be centralized, we have to be more flexible in our democratic processes, not to stand still in a way, or we are waiting till the problem is occurring and then we are trying afterwards to regulate. So this is not really working because you are creating already monopolies and so on. That's why I am very much supporting this idea of a digital euro. If we are leaving this once again to others, especially a private company, then we will be taken over by these, and our whole bank system might be taken over. And this is what we should avoid, but we should act more future-orientated today. And also, when we are discussing today, or we are not discussing so far, but if we are hearing that one big company would like to install a kind of emerging virtual and reality in a way, so metaverse, then we should act today in saying how we would like to see it. Otherwise, this will again a place where you might have child pornography, or you might have organized crime, and here we should install already some safeguards that this is not happening again, that we can't control at the end communication place in a way. So you see, there is a lot of what we should do, being more flexible. Either we can create a kind of infrastructure where we can decentralize data and processing these in a way as how you are having also a centralized place, or we are achieving also a kind of a more flexible legislator in a way that if there is an upcoming problem, we should immediately react and say how we would like to regulate this. So, and here we are finding otherwise ourselves that the European values will not be taken on board in the beginning of a new kind of process. And this is what we shouldn't have in mind. But we have to be open also for more balancing different fundamental rights, but also rethinking, from my point of view, the GDPR. So far, if you're coming here to the European level of GDPR, everyone is saying, oh, we created a gold standard and we can't touch these and we won't touch these and so on. But this is not what I would consider as a flexible legislator, because we are seeing already problems with the GDPR. And I can't understand why we are not fixing these problems. And this doesn't mean we have to open totally the GDPR, but we can specifically change some issues to improve the situation. And here also, then one day we have to think about if a kind of a concept of the GDPR, like data minimization, like deletion of data, and like using data only for one purpose, is the right approach in a data-driven world. So this means at the end also throwing away resources, and data minimization for AI issues is totally the wrong concept, because you will get a better result out of these algorithms if you're training them with a massively and a lot of data. So this is what I have in mind, and I'm talking now too long, I'm sorry, but I think we have to change ourselves, and especially our mindsets. We have to question some the principles, or what we are seeing as a principles in that we are readjusting these in a way. And of course, the preconditions of everything what is digital should be in place, let me say, at the end of 24 or so on. Otherwise, this won't happen. So these preconditions, and here I mean we need a lot of money. We need the infrastructure installed with non-spying devices in it. We need to have also the how do you call this, the investments for venture capital, so also for supporting startups and so on, and to create ideas. We have to avoid the killer acquisitions that everyone, what we are doing here in Europe is then sold to the Americans or to the US or the big companies. And also we have to probably rethink our competition law and antitrust law, because the scope of thinking national-wide as a market is probably not the right way forward. We have to give a kind of a way forward for emerging companies to scale up, to be also present, to come to global companies also, and here probably also to get a kind of a booster situation for the digital economy, also to rethink some of these procurement issues, and also the subsidized issues. Otherwise, we won't compete any longer with the others. And then, as a result, if we are not being more active here, we will be a kind of a digital colony at the end, and where we are totally dependent. And this is what we should avoid. We have the talents, we have the resources, but this needs to have also a concept in coming forward on a European level with European projects. And this shouldn't take too much time, because time and speed is already a kind of a factor. And if we are not creating here more incentives and innovation in the next 3 to 5 years, I would say the window might be closed and the dependency is growing, and this is what we should avoid. Thanks a lot for your patience. I hope I haven't been too long.
Not at all. Dear Axel, thank you very much for your clear words. You have painted quite complex picture, but let's be optimistic. And I would suggest let's first listen to Francesca's Bria keynote and then talk together in a couple of minutes. So please stay with us. Now I'd like to introduce Francesca Bria, the president of the Italian Innovation Fund and the former city of Barcelona. Needless to introduce her, she is involved in many European projects, and she is one of the most prominent voices when it comes to the debate regarding data and digital sovereignty in Europe. Dear Francesca, are you with us?
Yes, and can you see me? Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Hi. It's great to be with you. I'm not sure if I need to operate the slides from my side or you do it from your side.
You're just going to tell us and we're going to do it here.
Ah, okay, perfect. And then I tell you next.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, I'm not sure. I hope it's going to work well. Well, first of all, just let me say I'm really pleased to speak after Mr. Voss, because I very much agree with the picture he has painted. So he said a lot of things, and I think he also spoke with urgency, and invite Europe to take the lead and be ambitious, which I think it's one of the main points that we have to realize, that we need a pan-European strategy, a digital industrial strategy, which is ambitious not only at a regulatory level. So as we know, Europe is seen as a regulatory superpower of the digital age. And I think we are advancing very much in regulatory issues when it comes to antitrust, to digital taxation, to the GDPR, but also to the regulation of the gig economy and many other regulatory issues. But I think we need to realize that this is not enough. And we need to take back European digital sovereignty by competing exactly with the other superpower, which is the US and China, on technological and scientific innovation, but doing that in the European way. So we need to put forward a European digital sovereignty model that is aligned with our fundamental values, principles, and missions. And I think this is mainly to preserve citizens' fundamental rights, but also to put the digital revolution at the service of the big challenges that we're facing in society. First of all, decarbonization and the climate crisis. So to give it a direction. You can start with the slides. So I'm gonna paint a little bit more in the first part of my presentation. You can go to the next slide. What is wrong with the situation we have now? And then I'm gonna move into a propositive agenda, which is a roadmap of what we can do, in particular when it comes to data democracy, democratizing data and putting data at the service of people and society. So as I said before, I think we are seeing also in the pandemic a sort of like a sudden digitization of many aspects of our life. And we realized, I think, very rapidly, while before digitization is a word that pertains in the technology expert area, suddenly everybody from the smart working to distance education to digital healthcare system to a strong use of food delivery platforms and so on became much more digital in Europe. And we realized that digital infrastructures today are critical infrastructures of our society on which essential services depend upon: work, healthcare, education, food delivery. So this makes the topic very, very important. And also, if we see that artificial intelligence, massive computation, robotization, and automation, which are the big trends of this robot economy, they present many opportunities, but also new forms of power, and they consume enormous resources. So I think the big question is if digitization will exacerbate the crisis and the problems we are seeing today, or it will help us to lay the foundations for a renewal of our society. And I think the point here is that it's not enough to just accelerate digitization. We must give it a direction, which is exactly this digital sovereignty and achieving through digital technology both social and environmental sustainability. So the Green Digital Deal. Next. If we look at some of the main problems that we see today with the digital economy, we see a corporate monopoly power and an industrial concentration that it was not experienced before. And also, as it was said before, an external dependence on critical infrastructure. Just a few data for the big tech, the pandemic has been a shock, but unless like the rest of the economy, it wasn't a negative shock, but a positive shock. So the GAFAM, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft, and the Chinese equivalent, Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba, and Huawei, have an overall stock market value of more than $8 to $9 trillion US dollars. And the US tech stocks are today worth more than the entire European stock market. So in fact, the big tech today, they are not just driving the market. are the market. And if 5 companies own the digital economy, can it really work for all of us? So we really need to avoid that this concentration of power in the digital economy is going to increase. So we need a very strong intervention here. Next. So if we look at the platforms and the big platforms, so one of the main issues is that the platform economy is increasingly based on intangible assets, such as data and intellectual property, rather than physical infrastructures. And they manage to take advantage of a distributed supply and value chain, and they rapidly enter all sectors of the economy, and they can move from one sector to the other. So for example, Alphabet is able to move from search engine optimization to robotics, to autonomous cars, to biotech. And for example, Amazon can move from e-commerce to cloud computing to healthcare. So this poses a lot of challenges to antitrust, of course, and to competition law. But also it is clear that wealth in this changed economic landscape will need to be captured and shared in new ways. Next. I think that it was also mentioned by Mr. Voss before, one important trend is the rise of cryptocurrencies and digital payment system. I mean, this is just one example of the important trends we are seeing. And this has a very strategic value because it means that and they are these technologies which are deployed, in particular digital payment system and cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, which are, by the way, deployed by all the big tech players, are creating an indissoluble link between people's digital identity, their personal data, and the payment system, and all the different online services. And also, if we look at Bitcoin this year, in this market euphoria, it has reached a new high, exceeding the threshold of 1 trillion US dollars for the first time in history. So here we have also central banks, which obviously are prompted to act quickly on one time to regulate the phenomenon, but also to ride the wave with the transition to digital currencies issued by central banks. So for example, the digital euro. And we have seen over 60 countries that are experimented with national digital currencies. I think this area we will have to look very closely. Next. I think just to mention another question, which is going to be very important also today, but in the future, is algorithmic regulation. At the moment, we are seeing how this is important in the gig economy to understand the impact on algorithms, for example, on Airbnb, and the impact on affordable housing and cities. Same thing with Uber and how their algorithms and business models are impacting, for example, public transportation systems, but also they have a very strong impact on employment and the status of work, so on workers' rights, and unions on collective bargaining. So more and more understanding algorithms and making sure they're accountable and transparent and they can be regulated, it's going to be very important for the whole economy, and it will have a strong impact in all sectors of society. Next. So data, at the end, what is the business model of this digital economy? And as we saw before, data is the raw material of the digital economy, is becoming the most valuable commodity in the world. And many industries are counting on AI and data to drive growth in the next years. We count that machine learning will increase the return on investment around 10 to 30%. And for example, Tim Cook talks about the digital economy as a data industrial complex. So what is the real big tech are monetizing is actually extracting data and monetizing the data that we produce. Next slide. So some economists are talking about data extractivism, which of course the metaphor is with oil, because only a few companies here, as you can see, are able to extract this data and train their artificial intelligence algorithms, and then to create the kind of predictive services that are made with data. So data fuels AI, and then AI can create all these new services that we need. Next. So next, Shoshana Zuboff, which is the Harvard Business School professor, talks about surveillance capitalism. If you haven't read this book, I think it's very important to understand the business model of the digital economy, which sees the manipulation and monetization of personal information and data and the profiling of social behavior as the core of the business model of platforms. I think this is one of the main problems that we're facing, because this is enhanced through advertising and is at the heart of the economic model of platforms. And I think this is obviously unsustainable and also not in line with the fundamental rights and principles that we have in the European Union. Next. I think we are realizing there that this is not just an economic challenge. So when we're talking about digital sovereignty today, obviously we mean also political and economic sovereignty, but this is above all a democratic challenge. And in this digital transition, issues related to civil liberties, individual privacy, and the very functioning of our democracies must be given central importance. If not regulated, the foundation of democracy and the public space risks being undermined at the root by a new form of algorithmic power, giving the rise to the exponential growth of fake news, conspiracy theories, hate speech, and racist attacks online, which are generated by the negative externalities of the business model of digital giants. And this is what is called the black box society by the American law scholar Frank Pasquale. And this has profound implications for citizens and how citizens relate to each other and to the state. So it is very clear that big tech alone cannot handle all this power. And that's why the EU now is issuing a comprehensive framework to regulate digital platforms, such as the Digital Service Act, the Digital Market Act, the Data Governance Act, that we can see it as a new constitution for the digital age. I think this is a very good start, but must be improved. And as we heard before, it's not enough. Next. So what can we do actually when we come to data to realize that data should be perceived as a common good, as a public infrastructure on top of which we can create public value. So we can create value for society and citizens. And I think also that Europe can be betting on a model which is a third way, where the data is not controlled by the big tech platforms alone, is also not controlled by the states, but it can be controlled democratically by society and by citizens. So giving more control of data to citizens themselves. Next. So I've been experimenting this model for a long time when I was the Chief Technology Officer and Innovation Officer of the City of Barcelona for the last 5 years. And I think it's very important, given the fact that digital society will transform exactly all sectors of society, has strong implication on policy, on the democratic life, that we put people first. And we create a model that really preserves people's fundamental rights, but also enables society to unleash the potential and the power of this digital revolution. Next. We saw, for example, during the pandemic, how important it is now also to use data for good. So to use big data, artificial intelligence, healthcare data to monitor the pandemic for the public interest, for the public healthcare crisis, how it is important that our healthcare system has all the data which are updated, they are shared. It is very important that this data is shared among scientists, for research purpose, that it goes to the hospitals, to our healthcare system, and it's updated and it's data that can be used, to monitor the pandemic in real time, at the same time while preserving privacy, security, and ethics. And I think we show a little bit now with the green passes, with all the technologies that Europe has put forward, that this can be done without putting this kind of friction between privacy, security, and the ability to use data even in emergency and even for public healthcare crisis like the one we are living now. Next. This is a model that I want to put forward. That was the model I implemented in the city of Barcelona, which is looking at data as infrastructure. And as I said before, looking at data, the possibility to create public value with data. I think in smart cities, this is very clear because we need data to monitor traffic and to reshape, mobility, to move towards a sustainable, connected mobility. We need data to fight climate change and monitor CO2 emission, to monitor energy consumption, to monitor, everything we do in the city, water management. It's really another infrastructure like water, like transportation, like the air we breathe. It is really a public good on top of which, if we protect our fundamental rights of citizens and we open it up, we can unleash, of course, value for everybody. We can make sure that startups can use it to create AI-driven services and data-driven services for transportation, for climate change, for deep tech, for all the different things that we need in society. And we can create data commons by protecting exactly the rights of citizens and opening up this data to tackle the kind of environmental and social problems we want to solve in the city. Next. I think we also can move beyond, for example, having centralized data lakes with a standardized ontology, and we can create more decentralized, privacy-enhancing data infrastructures, such as the one, for example, we can use distributed ledger technology, advanced cryptography, to experiment models where people are really put in control of data. So people can decide what data they want to keep private and use advanced cryptography in an easy way, what data they want to share, with whom, and on what terms. So establishing a kind of really data democracy and giving more ability to people to decide, what data they are sharing and on what terms. So moving away from this kind of opaque data marketplaces to a more transparent and democratic data ecosystem. Next, this was a project we implemented all across Europe. It's called the Decode project. There are many experiments now looking at this kind of decentralized privacy-enhancing data infrastructure that give more power to the people. So at the moment, I think we have a very important step forward in the European Commission, which is the Data Governance Act, which has the objective to enable data control, use, and sharing. And it has now reached an agreement between the Council and the European Parliament. I'm sure you talk a lot about this in the conference. And I think the positive thing is that it has a strong focus on public interest, democratic data control, secure data sharing, and also this concept of data altruism for the common good. So now we can set up these institutions, which are data intermediaries, that can act to create trust in the data sharing process and to support also different parties to access data and help people to share the data for the public interest while supporting individuals and communities to exercise and manage their rights to control data. I think this point of empowering individual and communities, so the data subjects, to influence how data is used about them beyond compliance is absolutely critical. And of course, there are a lot of open questions about how to design and implement such intermediaries, such as data trust. And I think for me, the trust law is one legal framework that can be employed and used. And I think it's strong because it has innovative data stewardship mechanisms with robust institutional safeguards that are built in the governance mechanism. So I think it's a very promising way to build, for example, a pan-European data trust that will enable us to really control, access, and share our data. Next. So I think this is very important. How are we going to move to a data governance model, a European data governance model, to increase this access, sharing, and control of data while keeping the trust of consumers and citizens? So I think we have different approaches and data sharing structures. And we should move to the point that is actually the citizens that has access to the data and can decide for what purpose, for whom, how to make it easy to adopt these models that ensure protection and transparency. I think today this is the opposite. It's not easy at all. It's opaque, and we don't know who is accessing the data, how the data is monetized, for what purpose, and so on. So we can maybe get to a point where we have a European data trust ecosystem with different, a combination of different models, with different contractual, cooperative, or corporate structures. For example, we have the data sharing pools, which is going to be mainly for industries that want to share data. For example, you know, the different 9 EU data spaces that are created across a variety of sectors, such as healthcare, agriculture, energy, mobility, or manufacturing. So this will enable the industry to share the data. Then we have public data trust for public data, which can be very, very important, data cooperatives, and personal data sovereignty solutions. And this can be a combination of both, but it has to be done at a European level. And also we must ensure that we foster business to government data sharing also for the public interest. And I think this is a very important regulatory issue. So next, and I'm always almost at the end. So of course, there is the big question also of industrial data sovereignty and industrial sovereignty in general in the digital space. It was also said by Mr. Voss very clearly before. We need a coordinated digital industrial strategy with a lot of ambitions across all different sectors in 5G, investments in cloud computing, in artificial intelligence, in quantum, of course, in microprocessors. We have the European Chip Acts that want to reduce the dependence on components, but also we need to reduce dependence on raw material. And now we are setting the goal of producing in Europe 20% of the world's high-end semiconductors by 2030. Then we have the Gaia X project. I am sure you're going to talk about that in depth later, which want to set the gold standard for data security and interoperability. And that I think we need to find our own European solution, European cloud solutions, and our ability to manage data in a European way with technology made in Europe. So enable also alternative, probably decentralized data infrastructures and so on. And then, as I said, we have these 9 common EU data spaces across sectors, which are going to create more industrial capacity for Europe, which is very important. So I think this is just to give an idea. And next, that obviously when we're talking about data, we are talking here about a very complex situation and a new geopolitical dimension, when it is clear that you know, we have almost a new Cold War related to who is going to control these critical technologies and infrastructure of the present and of the future, 5G, chips, quantum, artificial intelligence, and biotech. And I think here we should be very clear, because what's happening, which is this struggle for technological supremacy, risks creating a fragmentation at the global value chains, and also a fragmentation at the geopolitical level. And I think the European response to this should be that on one side, we need more strategic interdependence. We need also more digital sovereignty. So we need more autonomy and independence for us on these critical components and infrastructures of the future. But also we need an international action. So Europe and like-minded democratic partners have a chance to chart a progressive global path for the digital society. And I think this has to be done quickly. And I think that Europe, and as we have shown now with the vaccines and with this kind of, you know, crisis that we're facing now in the pandemic, but also with digital taxation, with our ability to propose the GDPR and cybersecurity regulation and so on, we can be very much a central actor in proposing this kind of global path towards a more democratic digital society. Next. So I think, just getting to the end, that we should not be presented only with two possible futures of our digital world. So usually we are presented with a binary logic where we have only two scenarios: the big state and the Chinese, the big state, which is the Chinese model, which is Orwellian and is kind of digital authoritarianism, or the big tech, which is Silicon Valley surveillance capitalism. And I think that big state strips people of their individual freedoms and constitutional rights, while the big tech can create data monopolies that ultimately will manage critical infrastructures such as healthcare, education, and so on. And I think that both options are not an option for a democratic world. So I think we are at the right time next to propose a model of European digital sovereignty, which is a third way beyond the big tech and the big state, which I've been calling big democracy, which is a new digital humanism that guarantees full democratic participation of citizens, protect their fundamental rights, but is also it proposes also an international, interconnected global vision with democratically agreed rules that sets global standards for sustainable and democratic digitization that can benefit both people and the environment. And I really hope that this is going to be the European contribution for the new generation. And just next slides, which is the final slide, is that, it's just what I've said before, basically. And I think when we talk about digital sovereignty, we mean that as a society, we should be able to set the direction of the technological progress, putting data and technology at the service of people and the ecological transition. So I think at the end, is really this digital Green Deal, which is the European vision for the digital future that we have to put forward, but in a very pragmatic way. So we need to act now at a pan-European level, but with a clear direction and a clear strategy in mind. Thank you very much, and sorry if I've been too long.
Many thanks, dear Francesca. Thank you also for your clear words. There was some common line in your keynote also with the keynote of Axel Voss. Maybe we can start with just one question to Axel and one question to you, because we have to start the next panel. Having in mind the slogan of the European Data Summit, ready for competition, you have mentioned, or Francesca mentioned, the Digital Governance Act. And as we know, we are in the final stage with the Digital Markets Act. We're expecting in the beginning of the next year the Data Act. Are we on the right track? Are we ready for competition finally, or the third way is far away? What do you think? Maybe let's start with Axel, with your final remarks, and then we continue with Francesca.
So thanks a lot, and Francesca, thanks a lot for your passionate contribution here. I'm loving this, so thanks a lot. So I would say we are on the right path, but only to 30%. I think we need more and more and more. And here politicians might be, in the meantime, the problem on our way to become a kind of a leader in digital issues. So we are too complex in a way. Our ways of democratic structure too ponderous, too fragmented, politically also too fragmented to come to a kind of a clear vision. And therefore we need here a better political leadership on the EU level, and kind of radical changes we have to do. But still, what we are doing here on the legislative level right now is important, is a kind of a fundament also to come to a fair competition, and that we might have a chance with our European data industry or digital industry. But this is not, clearly, from my point, not enough.
Many thanks. So we continue with Francesca with the final words.
Yes, I think I agree with what Mr. Voss just said. And I think I said that we are moving in the right direction. So I think what we are doing is actually important, but we need to do more. And I think we have to quickly put in place effective solutions. So regulators have the power to act, but sometimes it still seems they are too slow and sometimes also intimidated by the power of big tech. And I think this is a problem. I think EU policymakers have now the occasion and even the duty to show real leadership. And I think it is right now, we have the moment also because I want to emphasize we have a EU Next Generation EU plan, which is the biggest investment that Europe is putting forward at the moment in the post-pandemic times, is around 2 trillion euros globally. But I think we calculated around 400 billions are going to go to digitization. And so it's going to be massive investment in all the digital infrastructures, but also in digitizing society. So from the government level to the business level to societal level, we have the possibility to do it now. So not only at the regulatory level, where we have to show more leadership and be, making sure that all this governance framework will actually do what we want to do, which is being effectively preventing this dominance and market power, creating capacity here in Europe, our digital sovereignty, and strengthen the digital sovereignty and our capacity to create European technology and European solutions. And to do that, we need an action plan which is pragmatic, and we need it now at a pan-European level. So this is the moment to act. So I agree exactly what was said before. It is good, but it is not enough. And I think we have now the possibility to really do it also because of the massive investment that we have right now going into sustainable and democratic digitization all across Europe.
Thank you very much. I wish we could have a bit more time to discuss the digital sovereignty today with you, but we have to continue with our program. We are really sad that you couldn't join us in person in Berlin, but we truly hope that there will be another opportunity to meet you and to discuss the digital sovereignty in Europe with you again. Many thanks. Please follow the coming discussion regarding gatekeepers and the DMA, and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.